Welcome to Heritage Garden Wisdom. I'm Frank Miller, and I need you to understand something critical about the food system. A single plant species produces edible food 12 months per year. Root, shoot, pollen, seed, every part harvestable. It grows in every climate where water meets land. It produces 10 times the starch of potatoes per acre. It accomplishes this without fertilizer, without tilling, and without planting. For 30,000 years, this was humanity's primary grocery store. Then we systematically drained that grocery store. We replaced a perennial system of abundance with annual farms that poison our watersheds. And we classified the most productive food plant in human history as a weed. This is the systematic destruction of the wetland supermarket, erased just before we needed it most. Before we go further, make sure you're subscribed to Heritage Garden Wisdom. We document the plants that agricultural policy wants suppressed, the food systems that threaten industrial farming profits, and the traditional knowledge that governments spent centuries erasing. Hit subscribe right now because this information gets more valuable every week as food prices climb. Sharing this video helps preserve knowledge that powerful interests want buried. The like button is right there. Use it because engagement determines whether this reaches people who desperately need it. Let me show you exactly what was destroyed and why it matters more now than ever. Plant number 1, cattail, Typha latifolia. The Perennial Supermarket. Section 1. Archaeological evidence of 30,000-year food dependency. The archive opens 30,000 years ago along the banks of the Yangtze River in China at an archaeological site dated to the Paleolithic era. Researchers analyzing ancient grinding tools found something that fundamentally challenged assumptions about pre-agricultural diets. Starch grains, not from wheat, not from rice, but from the roots of a wild wetland plant. They found human residues proving that long before the invention of agriculture, before anyone conceived of plowing a field, people were processing this plant into flour using sophisticated techniques. Jump forward to a separate site in Italy, also 30,000 years old, grinding stones covered in the same residue. This pattern appears across multiple continents and time periods. This was not a backup food source utilized during emergencies. This was a dietary staple in a world where survival meant knowing exactly what to harvest first. Our ancestors chose this plant not for sentimental reasons, but for survival. The archaeological record is unambiguous. This plant fed humanity for longer than agriculture has existed. This is the cattail, scientifically known as Typha latifolia, engineered by evolution for one specific purpose: to feed continuously across all seasons. Most agricultural crops provide one harvest annually. The cattail provides 4 distinct harvests across 12 months. Spring harvest, young shoots. In early spring, young shoots emerge from the mud. You peel away the outer leaves to reveal a crisp, white core with a taste resembling cucumber. When Europeans first encountered this in Russia, they called it Cossack asparagus. It was a delicacy that saved thousands from scurvy after long winters depleted vitamin C stores. Early summer harvest, green flower heads. In early summer, the green flower heads appear. Before they pollinate, you harvest and boil them. They taste like corn on the cob, but with a richer, earthier depth. Midsummer harvest, pollen. In midsummer, the male flowers release their pollen. This is not dust, it is high-protein flour ready for immediate harvest. You can shake a single stalk and collect tablespoons of pollen. Indigenous peoples mixed it with water to make bright yellow cakes and breads. The pollen requires no processing beyond collection. Winter harvest, rhizomes. In winter, when the rest of the agricultural world is frozen and dormant, the real treasure waits underground. You dig the roots, the rhizomes. They are packed with 30 to 46% starch by weight. 1 acre of cattails can produce 6,400 pounds of flour. That exceeds wheat production, exceeds corn production, exceeds rye production per acre. And you never planted a single seed. The Paiute people had a clan called the Cattail Eaters. The Cahuilla tribe called themselves the Cattail People. Daniel Mormon's massive ethnobotanical database catalogs Native American plant use across hundreds of tribes. The entry on cattails is one of the longest in the entire book. Virtually every tribe that lived near water understood the assignment. Food applications. They dried the roots for winter storage. They pounded them into flour for porridge and bread. They harvested pollen for high-protein cakes. They ate the shoots fresh and the flower heads cooked. Non-food applications, equally critical. They wove the leaves into waterproof mats for wigwam construction. They twisted the fibers into cordage stronger than hemp. They used the fluff from the seed heads to insulate moccasins against freezing temperatures and to line infant diapers. The jelly found between young leaves is a potent antiseptic and numbing agent used to treat wounds and toothaches with documented effectiveness. One plant provided food, medicine, shelter, and clothing. This was not supplemental survival knowledge. This was infrastructure. The abundance was staggering. A natural stand can contain 86,000 stems per acre. A single root system can spread to cover 3 acres through underground rhizome networks. This was not a weed. This was infrastructure. And it required nothing, no tilling, no fertilizer, no replanting, no irrigation systems. For 30,000 years, this was the definition of wealth. How did a food system this abundant vanish? Nature didn't kill it. Policy did. The erasure began in 1849. The United States Congress passed the first Swampland Act. It transferred millions of acres of federal wetlands to state governments with one explicit condition: drain them. The prevailing economic theory of the 19th century was straightforward. Water standing on land represents waste. A geological dictionary from 1822 defined a swamp as a piece of land with wet, miry soil. Such land is unprofitable or even a nuisance until it be drained. Nuisance. That was the official designation for the ecosystem that fed the continent for millennia. By 1850, the act expanded dramatically. Arkansas, Alabama, California, Florida, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Missouri, Ohio, Wisconsin. 50 million acres were transferred with the explicit mandate to destroy the hydrology. The government published instructional guides on wetland destruction. Titles like "Draining for Profit" became bestsellers among landowners eager to convert wetlands to agricultural land. In 1902, mechanization accelerated the destruction. The invention of the Buckeye steam traction ditcher mechanized wetland drainage. It could lay drainage tiles faster than 100 men working manually. The Great Black Swamp in Ohio, once a massive carbon sink and food forest, was drained completely. The Florida Everglades, 20 million acres, were channeled and diverted. The Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta was systematically drained. Between 1950s and 1970s, agricultural drainage alone destroyed 12 million acres of wetlands. Of the 221 million acres of wetlands that once existed in the lower 48 states, only 103 million remain today, more than half gone, and with them, the cattails. What grew in place of the drained wetlands? The Corn Belt, the richest agricultural region in the world by conventional economic metrics. We traded a perennial, self-sustaining food system for annual crops requiring billions of dollars in fertilizer, pesticides, and diesel fuel annually. But wetlands were not drained solely for farmland expansion. They were drained because cattails had a fatal flaw from an economic control perspective. They could not be controlled. You cannot sell someone cattail seeds that they must repurchase annually. Every year, cattails replant themselves through natural propagation. You cannot patent a plant that spreads across 3 acres from a single root system. You cannot tax someone for walking into a marsh and gathering pollen. A perennial food system that regenerates itself without human intervention is a direct threat to an economy built on manufactured scarcity and annual seed sales. So the wetlands were systematically drained, the cattails were eliminated, and the knowledge was dismissed as primitive. Knowledge is harder to eliminate than plants, and nature has a persistent way of offering solutions to the problems we create. Modern research on cattails began in the 1980s, not for food applications, but for energy production. Scientists in Minnesota discovered that cattails produce 22 tons of biomass per acre annually. That represents a staggering amount of renewable energy potential. Then researchers found something even more important. Cattails are the kidneys of the earth. They absorb nitrogen and phosphorus from polluted water with exceptional efficiency. The fertilizers we spread on cornfields run off into watersheds, causing toxic algae blooms that create dead zones. Planting cattails absorbs that pollution. Harvesting 250 acres of cattails removes 5 tons of phosphorus from the ecosystem. When you burn that harvested biomass for fuel, the ash that remains is pure fertilizer, phosphorus captured and ready to return to fields. It creates a closed-loop system. The International Institute for Sustainable Development in Manitoba has been harvesting cattails commercially since 2012. They harvest 15 to 20 tons per acre annually. Each ton sequesters over 1 ton of carbon dioxide. And because cattails are perennial, you harvest them like a lawn. You cut them and they regrow the following year. No plowing, no annual planting, no soil erosion. Compare that to conventional corn production. Annual planting, tilled soil, eroded topsoil, polluted water runoff, massive fertilizer inputs, pesticide dependency. Cattails heal contaminated water, build soil through organic matter deposition, sequester atmospheric carbon, and produce food for 12 months annually. But almost nobody knows this. We still classify them as weeds. Landowners across North America spend millions of dollars annually spraying herbicides to kill the most productive food plant on the continent. We are actively poisoning the solution to protect the problem. Municipal agencies spray wetland areas to eliminate cattails. Agricultural operations view them as invasive weeds competing with crops. Homeowners associations mandate their removal from decorative ponds. The plant that could solve multiple environmental crises simultaneously, water pollution, carbon sequestration, soil erosion, food production, is systematically eliminated because it doesn't fit the industrial agricultural model. Cattail identification is straightforward. They grow in standing water or saturated soil along pond edges, marsh boundaries, roadside ditches, and stream banks. Visual identification. Tall grass-like leaves growing 6 to 9 feet high. The distinctive brown cylindrical seed heads appear in late summer, the classic hot dog on a stick appearance everyone recognizes. Spring shoot harvest. In early spring, when shoots are 6 to 18 inches tall, grasp the shoot near the base and pull upward. Peel away the outer leaves to reveal the white inner core. Eat raw or cooked. Summer flower head harvest. Before the male flowers release pollen, the green flower heads can be harvested. Boil for 10 to 15 minutes and eat like corn on the cob. Pollen harvest. When male flowers are releasing pollen, visible as yellow dust, shake stalks over a container. The pollen falls easily. Store in sealed containers. Use as a protein-rich flower additive. Winter rhizome harvest. In late fall through winter, dig rhizomes from the mud. Wash thoroughly. The outer layer is fibrous, but the inner core is starchy. Process by crushing, washing in water to separate starch from fiber and allowing starch to settle. The resulting flour is pure starch. The story of the cattail is not about rediscovery. It is about recognition. The knowledge was never lost, only systematically ignored and suppressed. And now, while the world spends billions engineering drought-resistant crops and carbon capture machines, the answer has been waiting in the ditch beside the road. The plant that fed humanity 12 months annually, the plant that survived the drainage of 65 million acres of wetlands. It never stopped offering its gifts. It simply waited for us to remember. As food prices climb, as agricultural land degrades, as water pollution intensifies, as climate instability increases, the cattail remains, offering the same abundance it provided for 30,000 years. This knowledge is not lost. It grows in every marsh, every riverbank, every pond edge. The plant we classified as a weed may represent the future of food security. All it requires is that we look past the profit model of annual crops and see what was always there, the supermarket of the swamp. If this information changed how you view wetland plants, share this video with someone who needs to understand what was destroyed. Drop a comment telling me if cattails grow in your area or if you've harvested them. I'm Frank Miller with Heritage Garden Wisdom, and I want to know who's reclaiming this knowledge. A plant that produces food 12 months annually, a plant that survived 30,000 years, a plant that requires zero inputs, a plant we systematically destroyed and now classify as a weed. That's the cattail. That's the wetland supermarket they drained. That's why they eliminated 65 million acres of the most productive food system in human history. Because perennial abundance threatens an economy built on annual scarcity. Learn to identify it, understand what was destroyed, recognize what still remains. The solution they drained is still growing in ditches, waiting.